What's the problem?
You came on and his stuff broke.
Really? Okay.
It's all your fault.
I don't know. I mean, that's the only thing I
I
see.
can't hear you. Hi, Ann. I can't hear anyone.
Uh-oh. We can hear,
Something
I can hear
happened.
Steve.
Yeah,
Hang on.
you may have to hold up little signs. Too bad you don't have Sam to help you. Well, you can't hear me.
That's right.
You're telling
Can
us about,
Now I can hear you.
you can hear
Right.
it?
Okay, what happened?
Oh, I plugged something in and it switched the volume to, the speaker to another place and its volume was down. So anyway, we're good. All right, so at least Ann joined me. No one else wants to come on our class except Steve and Ann.
And Vicky,
And Vicky.
Hey,
Sorry,
Vicky.
Vicky.
I show her all the
Uh,
time, but she doesn't really
And,
like that.
And Melson's here. He's at class.
Or his name.
Nelson's there.
I do
Yeah.
I do kind of like being at home because like my hair is full of aloe vera gel. Nobody can tell but me.
Well, unless I keep it looking at you like that.
That's all on top of my head. You
Oh,
can't tell. Dipped my head in aloe vera gel.
All right, good. Well, I think I'm set up now.
Well, they ought to start pouring in then.
Well, I think everyone's figured this out. They don't have to sign on till like 6:58.
Yep.
You know, it's just like running to class. Oh, there's the bell. Got to get in the class. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's harkening back to high school days, but
Are you monitoring? Here comes Patty. Hi, Patty. There she is. Hey, Patty.
hi,
Hello.
Patty.
How are you guys?
Terrific.
Horrific.
Horrific. huh?
Terrific.
Oh,
Terrific.
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 Yeah.
Better check your sound again. Hope something else in and see what breaks.
Yeah.
Jack,
Yes.
we might, as when we say our prayers, we might keep in mind Alan and Debbie Fussell at Market Street.
Yes.
They were the one family that lost their home in the fire.
Yes.
And this past week, Alan was diagnosed with colon cancer.
Oh, no.
He had
Oh,
surgery yesterday.
oh.
So
Alan and Debbie Fussell.
they could really,
That's terrible.
Oh.
Yeah.
How fast they that's an indication when they don't wait a couple months, you know, like did surgery immediately. So
Mhm.
that sounds good.
so
Hmm.
they could really use our prayers. Two of the girls are in this, two of them, I guess, are in the Salem area, Dallas, and then one is in Alaska.
Do you know how old they are?
They're just a little bit older than my kids, so the kids are in
No,
their,
how old are they our age, the parents?
yeah, a little older than Mark and I.
Okay.
Alan is actually a cousin to Mark.
Oh. Oh.
Hey, Dave Larson. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Hi,
Can you,
hi,
can
Dave.
you hear?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I've been sick the last 6 days.
Wow, I'm
Oh.
sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
And
my
what is
son
it?
got the flu shot before he went to health camp and then he ended up getting the flu.
That
And
happens.
yeah, and then the kids got it. And so I went up there because he needed help. with his generator because it stopped working. So I bought a couple generators and took my grandson up there and decided to stay a couple of days so my grandson could play with Jacob. And in turn, I ended up getting the sickness from them.
Wow.
And so since Thursday, I've been having, well, Thursday, Friday, I had fevers, I had sweats, I had chills, I had massive migraines. All of that's gone now. But now I'm just dealing with just feeling a little weak. But other than that, I'm doing much better. No more pain, no more body aches.
Well, good.
So I'm doing
Wow.
much better.
Wow. Sounds like I'll pass on the flu shot this year. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hi,
he got
Ann
the flu
Hoover.
shot and then he got sick.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi, Linda.
Hello, Jack. Hi.
I'm sorry, Dave. I talked over you.
No, it's all good. I just want to be well enough to preach Sunday for Tualatin, so I'm hoping I'm better by then.
Yeah. Or else you get them all sick.
I'm doing much better than where I was, so
Good.
that's good.
Good.
Happy
All right.
birthday, Anne.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Whose birthday?
Ann Hoover.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
How exciting is that?
it's pretty exciting.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
To you. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
That's
There you
cool. That is the most memorable birthday song I've ever had.
It's probably the worst one you ever heard.
That
Yeah.
was definitely most memorable.
Yeah. Hmm. That's funny.
No.
Okay. We're trying to make sure everyone's. And you have a cat, don't you? A cat's trying
Yeah.
to fight with you.
Oh,
He hears all of us. He heard us singing and it perked him up.
Oh,
We must have been out of tune.
he must started howling.
Yeah.
Do cats even howl?
I'm sorry.
Do cats howl?
He yowls. He'll
Yeah.
yowl. Yeah,
Yeah.
he does.
Have I disappeared or can you guys see me?
no, we
You
can't.
Disappeared.
How
Oh, you're
about
back.
now?
Now you're back.
Wow.
Are you by yourself tonight?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
No, you're gone
Something-
again.
Something happened.
Yeah, Stan's not there to help you. You disappeared.
Yeah.
This has been happening at the schools all week
Really?
long. Yes. The information we've been given is that Zoom has so many clients now, they don't have enough bandwidth.
Oh,
Just
There,
All right.
that-
There I
that's
am.
better.
I'm back.
Yeah, that's the right one.
All right. Glad to be back. Okay, we have 7 people on YouTube and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
11.
11. Hi, Kelly. I should say hi, Kelly's laptop, since that's your name. And I don't know who a Murray L73 is.
That's Linda Murray.
I know, but what's the
I've
L73? Linda?
I'm not 73 anymore, but
Oh,
I've been trying to change it, and I'm not computer lit, so
that's okay. It's sort of like Ann Hoover on her birthday. She's still 39. You could say on 73,
No, tomorrow I'll be 43.
43.
Yeah, we'll have to do the 43rd anniversary of my baptism tomorrow.
Wow, awesome.
Great.
Now,
Yeah,
if you
so
were
I'll just say 43.
if you were born on a leap year and leap day, you would have to divide your age by 4.
Oh. But I wasn't, so I won't.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay, 4 more minutes and we're going to start with who we have. Because we have 7 on YouTube. I don't even see the number on Zoom. Someone tell me.
11.
Oh, and Sam's gone. I don't think we'll manage,
Mhm.
but that's okay. Any other news anyone wants to share? Ten four. Okay, I guess this rain will help the fires.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's Marissa and Jeff.
Hopefully it's not too much rain all at once.
Yeah.
We don't need landslides too.
Isn't there a song like that? Landslides bring me down.
No, that's rainy days and Mondays.
Okay.
Rainy days and Mondays, yeah.
No, I was thinking of the Heart song. Right
No,
in?
it's Fleetwood Mac, honey.
Fleetwood Mac.
landslide.
Sorry, Fleetwood Mac. Sorry. Jack and Artie, good to see you.
Hey, hello. Good to see you.
Hello. I guess no one wanted to visit because everyone's coming on at the last moment, but that's all right.
We're busy.
You're busy. Yeah, no, that's good. So we got 9 on YouTube. That's good. So just to catch everybody up, Patty was sharing the information on the Fussels that they lost their home, and then Alan came down with colon cancer. So we want to pray for that family, just like when it rains, it pours, as the saying goes.
You know,
I'm sorry?
you know how the surgery went. He had surgery yesterday.
Yeah, he had surgery yesterday.
And hopefully he's doing well. Yeah.
And so far, okay. They say that in 6 weeks, as soon as he heals up, he'll start chemo.
Chemo.
All right. Wow. Well, it's good to see Craig. There's Mark in his special office.
Good evening.
And we got 10 on Zoom. All right. So as you probably all have figured, I'm all by my lonesome today. And so Steve's going to read some scripture for me. And I'll have probably a harder time monitoring questions. So just, I don't know, just be patient. That's all right. And tonight we're at the end of 2 Timothy, and it's Paul's last recorded words. So I hope you find it interesting. But as always, we want to start with a word of prayer. And I haven't asked Mark Nowak. How about Firefighter Mark? Would you like to lead us in prayer as we get started?
I would be honored.
All right, let's go to God in prayer.
Dear Father in heaven, we're so very grateful that we have the opportunity to study some more of your word. We so look forward to the day that we can gather in our building without restrictions, that we may enjoy each other's company and be able to study together face to face with word in hand. We are very thankful, though, for the opportunity that we have to study via electronics and the technology that we've been allowed to have and be blessed to take advantage of. We ask that you watch over us as we go through your word and help us to glean from it what we need to take us through our daily lives, that we may walk closer to you. Forgive us our many sins. In Jesus' precious name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. So I'm going to mute everybody, and then we'll get started. Sam is taking a few days off with Natalie. It was his anniversary this last week, so he's going down to see her folks, and so that's why he's not with us. Okay. And then if you'd all maybe mute your cameras, if you want to, then we'll go from there. So we are in the last chapter, the last section of Paul's words to Timothy. And it's sad to hear what Paul said, to say goodbye to him in many ways. And at least that's what I always feel, because you get affection for Paul as you follow his life into his end. But yet he doesn't have that type of attitude at all. He views death totally different than people do in other generations, even today. So we're going to talk about the day of our own departure, and we're going to try to personalize this whole study, because Paul's talking about himself, but in talking about himself, we should be able to say the same thing. And so we're going to deal with death as a Christian. So notice in 2 Timothy, we're going to be in verse 6, and we'll try to finish the whole chapter all the way through verse 22. But Paul's continuing his instruction for Timothy, which he called his son in the faith. And this started in chapter 4 and verse 1, where he charged him in the presence of God and Jesus to preach the word. Verse 5, he said, do the work of evangelists, fulfill your ministry. Then in verse 6, we have that single word that starts it. It says for. And when you look at that word for, that's a transition word. And we have to understand, what Paul's connecting here, because he says, for I'm going to die. And he'll use more descriptive words than that. Well, let's just read it. Verse 6 and 7. I'm already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure has come. I fought the good fight. I've finished the course. I've kept the faith. So he's saying, Timothy, you got to do the work of your evangelist. Preach the word, because I'm leaving and I'm handing over the torch, the baton to you, and you got to run with it. And Paul has fulfilled everything he can do. He's duplicated himself in Timothy. He says, Timothy, just do your job. Now he talks about the great reward that comes to those that fulfill their ministry. And that's where he speaks to all of us. And we're going to talk about death. And now a lot of people, that's depressing. It's sad for those that are left behind. There's a lot of quotes on the internet you get on death. Of course, we call it the inevitable reality, that it's something you can't escape. The only exception, of course, would be if Jesus comes. But even then, our body, we'll leave this body and we'll be, our body will be transformed into a new one. And so we're going to leave everything behind. And so everyone is going to face death sooner or later. And yet people have such a pessimistic attitude towards it. I hope you can read these quotes, but this one says, if death is inevitable, one should try to die well. And I looked at that and I go, what does that mean? Why would I worry about dying well? I mean, we have no say about how we're going to die and when we are going to die, unless, of course, we take our life ourselves. But rather than dying well, we should maybe have a different attitude. Like, look at this quote. Death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss is what dies inside us while we live. Now, that's perhaps gets more to the point of what Paul is going to say here. And so what we want to see, the key to living with a view of our own death is we want to live well. Now, how do you gauge a life well lived? Well, we're going to let Paul tell us what a life well lived looks like. And so we're going to look at 4 points here. We're going to look at the day of our death. It's certainly coming. And our day of our death course is a day of great reward. Thirdly, the day of our death is filled with trials. And then fourthly, the day of our death is a day of deliverance. And so if we keep that in our mind, that it's inevitable, it's going to happen, then we're going to live life with that in mind. And we're not going to set treasures on this earth, but we're going to set up treasures in heaven. So the first verse we read in verse 6, I'm being poured out as a drink offering. The time of my departure has come. That's where we get our first point. The day of my death is coming as well. Now, we don't know when it's going to be, and we don't know how it's going to happen. Could be a car accident. It could be, sadly, like some people, in a fire. It could be a heart attack. It could be like our elders at South Salem, Virgil Simmons, crossing the street here on Commercial. We just don't know. But Paul's going to focus here on the present. He says, I'm being poured out as a drink offering. The time of my departure. Let's look at those two words. First of all, this idea of libation or a drink offering. It's the idea that the people in their day would offer these drink offerings to their gods before they sacrificed it. It would take a cup of wine. In other cases, it would even be rice, and they'd pour it out on the ground or pour it out on the sacrifice. And it was to let the gods know what aroma this sacrifice smelled like. But it also represented the shedding of blood, because when you poured out wine, it was red and it's being poured out on the ground. So it signifies death. There's several times that this concept is mentioned in the Bible. The first one, and Steve, you need to unmute yourself. He's going to read for us Genesis chapter 35 and verse 14. This is Jacob. Go ahead, Steve.
Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he had spoken with him, a pillar of stone, and he poured out a drink offering on it. He also poured oil on it.
All right, that's a libation. It literally means a pouring out of a drink offering. Jesus himself said he would pour out himself as a drink offering. That's Isaiah 53 and verse 12. Go ahead.
And I'm looking it up. There we go.
All right.
Therefore, I will allot him a portion with the great, and he will divide the booty with the strong, because he poured out himself to death and was numbered with the transgressors.
Poured himself out. And of course, you should be mindful of that spear, and water came forth mixed with blood and was poured out on the ground. Paul uses this word picture himself in Philippians chapter 2 and verse 17.
Yeah, working on it.
That's all right.
Philippians 2:17. But even if I'm being poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrifice and service of your faith, I rejoice and share my joy with you all.
All right, here we get our first clue about how to live life well. Because Paul couples his death being poured out as a drink offering, because that's what it signifies, with sacrifice and service. And so, since we all know we're going to die, and this life on this earth is so short, a life lived well lives this life with view to the next always. And it's always viewed in service to God, to spend this time on this earth in a way to give him glory, because we know he's the only thing that matters, and we want to live with him then. The next word is this idea of departure. The time of my departure is come. What's interesting about this word, it literally means a loosing. Go ahead. Someone add something, or? All right, just a noise. The word loosing here is used of pulling thread out of something that's knit so it comes apart. It's used of unyoking an animal or loosing it from its tackle that bind it to a plow or a cart. Or if a prisoner was bound with chains or fetters, you loosen that and set him free. It was used of loosening the ropes of a tent. We'd say pulling up camp, because you're going to move to somewhere else. It's also is used to describe the loosening of a mooring of a ship to the dock. And you see a picture here of it, these big cables or ropes that secure the ship to the dock. As long as we're in this body, the real you and me, we're spirits. We're tied to this earth as long as we're in this body. But when we die, our spirit is loosed and it's set free, and it's allowed to depart and go somewhere else. And that's inherent in this word departure. If you say the time of my departure is at hand, you might ask and say, well, where are you going, Jack? Well, that's inferred in this idea. It's not just I'm leaving this earth, and that's interesting. You have to leave where you are currently if you want to go where you want to be. And where are you going, Paul? Well, you know, it's heaven. And that's where we want to be. And that demands that we have to leave this earth in order to get there. And that puts everything, death in a different light. It's not just a defeat. It's not the end of something, more so than it's the beginning of something better. And you can't get to where you want to be until you leave the place where you are. And that's why Paul uses this language. The time of my departure has come. And so he says, I'm ready. And here's how you live life well then. He says in verse 7, I've fought the good fight. I've finished the course. I've kept the faith. So if we want to live well, I would say, live strong and finish strong. Keep the faith. And that's the last thing he said here. And so we look at those individually. I fought the good fight. What do you think that might mean? What fight is he talking about? Anyone? You want to chime in here? What fight is he talking about? Is it go ahead.
The spiritual.
And what would you mean by that? Just
he's kept his faith during his life until the end of his reward is at hand, and he's continued to stand up for Christ. So the fight for the good word.
Okay, good. And some, and I'm glad you say spiritual, because it's all a spiritual fight. But sometimes we think, well, maybe that's just a doctrinal fight. He had to fight for the doctrine. Well, that's part of it. I like what you said, Jeff. He kept the faith. It's more personal than just fighting for the soundness of the word.
And we use words like fight and hey, I'll play that game. And it's not really a game, right? It's not a game. But we use those phrases a lot, and we mean well, I think, quite often. I think it's the same. What I've studied with this is the same thing here, where it says, I've fought the good fight. Well, did he really fight? He didn't physically fight, and he may not even verbally, spiritually fought, but he kept the battle against sin in his life.
There you go. Because think about the word literally means agonizamo, and it's a struggle. It's compete for a prize, like in the athletic games. And that's the picture he's going to use here, especially when he gets to the victory. Didn't Paul say, I buffet my body daily? And what was he fighting against? Sin. And I'm glad you said that, Jeff. Paul personally had to struggle and fight to keep pure from this world, because it's always trying to suck us in. Satan is always trying to destroy each and every one of us, to give up the faith. And he throws one trial after another. And he cheats, he sneaks and stabs you in the back, or has friends stab you in the back. Whatever it is, there's no rest from Satan. It's a battle. And Paul says, I fought the good fight. It's a good fight. Then he says, I finished the race. And that's why he looks at the keeping the faith is not just a sprint. It's not just a single event. It's like a marathon. And Paul had to fight it and run it up to the very, very last. And we'll show some evidence of that in a second. And that's why he could summarize, say, I've kept the faith. I don't know, isn't that beautiful, the idea? And when I say finish strong, well, it's so sad, as we're going to see some people, they deserted Paul. Some people, they're so close to the end of the goal, which is to be with God in heaven. And they give up the faith. They just quit the race. They quit fighting because they just get tired. And it's so sad. Finish strong to the very, very, very last. All right. Any thoughts?
Hey, Jack.
Yes.
Brian.
Right.
I don't know if you noticed, but there are three groups of people that Paul is addressing in verse 7.
Yes.
He says, I have fought the good fight. He's talking about the Romans and the gladiators.
Soldiers, yes.
I have finished the race. That was to the Greeks.
The athletes,
and
yes.
And then kept the faith. That was to the Jews.
There you go.
He's addressing the Romans, the Greeks, and the Jews in verse 7.
Yeah, that's great. Those word pictures, he pulls them all in together. That's good. And that's what it is. That's how you live a life well. All right. So because of that, the day of our death is the most exciting day in our life because there's something in the future that is we're waiting for. So Paul says in the future, does somebody, your Bible say something other different than future? Anybody's? Because the word literally means
I have
what's
finally.
what?
Finally.
Finally, there you go. It carries the idea of what's next, or the culmination of everything you've been looking for, or next up. And so he says, the NAS says in the future. No, for Paul, it's next day. It's immediate. It's the next thing he gets to look forward to. There's laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. Not only to me, he says, but also to all who have loved his appearance. Boy, this verse is a mouthful. So here's our second point. Your day of death is the greatest day of reward you'll ever see. You can't top it. And so let's look at some of the words that he uses here. If you live strong, this is what you can expect. Paul's words, certainly, I just want you to know this, aren't the words of a discouraged, broken old man. And there's no despair in his words. There's no cynicism. There's no fear as he faces this imminent execution that awaits him. And all he has is this calm assurance of something better to look forward to. Now, he's in the Mamertine prison in Rome, and it was called the House of Darkness. The prisons were dim, the rooms, the cells, they were dirty. In the lower chambers, there was wet and mold and no light. And that's where Paul was. They didn't house prisoners here to punish them. This place was where prisoners stayed waiting execution. Tradition says Peter waited here as well before he was crucified upside down there in Rome. And so it had a stench in it that was hideous, they say, according to reports, and it was terrifying. And here Paul has such a positive tone about what's awaiting him. Now, the word laid up means to be appointed. It's it's a reward, and it's something that's reserved for you. And that's what Jesus promises us, this crown of righteousness. Now, this crown is not a king's crown. It's a victor's crown. And it really looks like this, a wreath. I hope y'all can see that. And it was made out of plant material. And so you had it if you won the athletic games and you wore it, and it was crowned on you by a dignitary, someone of prominence. And then it was a great honor, but then it would just perish. You couldn't keep it. And so they have pictures of, people wearing them. And that's the word that he uses here, a Stephanos. And that's where we get the name Stephen from, a victor's crown. And so Paul says, death is going to give me the victory crown. Now, by worldly standards, Paul's life's been a failure. He suffered the loss of everything. And now he's going to even lose his life as a criminal. He's been forsaken by his friends. And the last thing he can do is call his son in the faith. Timothy says, come quickly, because he's left alone, deserted, as he waits in this damp, cold cell for his execution. But he has none of that sadness. He's not a victim. Paul sees himself as a victor, a champion, because he's fought the fight, kept the faith, the good fight. Wow. I think that's startling. Notice what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. Everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath. That's this Stephanos, the one we're looking at. But we get an imperishable one. All right. Now notice who's going to give it. Who is it? Who is the dignitary, the person of prominence that's going to put this wreath, if you think of it that way, and put it on your head, this victory crown?
Well, it'd be Jesus, obviously.
Jesus himself. And that's why Paul said in Philippians 1, for me to die is gain. You know, I'd much rather be with Christ than stay here, but that's more profitable for you. He expected to stand right before Jesus and have him crown him with this victory crown. And that happens for all of us the day we die. And it's the most exciting thing you can have. And now we have some verses to talk about this. And so how Jesus this is a common theme throughout the New Testament, just not Paul. So the first one we want to look at is in James chapter 1 and verse 12. So Steve, you ready?
Yep. Blessed is a man who perseveres under trial. For once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him.
Same thing. The trials, Paul had the trials. We have trials, and they'll happen, as we're going to see, right to the day you die. There's no slack time. Satan never gives up. But if you persevere, endure, and keep the faith, this crown of life. Now, it's to those the Lord has promised, to those who love him. We're going to come back to that. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 4.
And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the unfading crown of glory.
Now, this is talking to elders, specifically in this context. And he says, you're going to receive, and notice the unfading. This is one that is eternal. This crown, and how he calls it a crown of glory. The last one is in Revelation chapter 2. It's Jesus himself speaking in verse 10.
Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to cast some of you into prison, so that you will be tested, and you will have tribulation for 10 days. Be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life.
Wow, this verse is full of good stuff. First of all, don't be afraid. All right, you're going to suffer. Don't be afraid, because Jesus said, I'll never fail you or forsake you. Second of all, Satan's behind it all. He's going to cast some of you into prison. Satan is the big adversary. He's trying to destroy us, so we'll give up the faith. He said, you're going to be tested. And 10 days means a complete, thorough thrashing. 10 just means complete here. But he says, on your part, all you do is keep the faith, even if you have to die. That's what until death means. Even if you have to die. Then who's personally going to give you the crown of life? Jesus. He said, I'm going to give you the crown of life. Wow. Awarded it by Jesus himself, who wears the royal crown. Napoleon said this, the day he died, I die before my time, and my body will be given back to the earth to become the food of worms. Such is the fate which soon waits the great Napoleon. Wow. No victory crown for him. But for all of us that keep the faith, we get that crown. Gandhi, he's the leader of a big movement. He said this before he died. My days are numbered. I'm not likely to live very long. Isn't that what Paul says here? Perhaps a year or a little more. For the first time in 50 years, I find myself in a slough of despond or despondency. He's depressed. All about me is darkness. I am praying for light. That's the person that doesn't have Christ. That's the person that hasn't lived life well. You don't hear any of that despondency in Paul. It's just this anticipation and excitement. Now, notice who this crown is for. Those who loved his appearing. And now what it says, the end of verse 8. Not only to me, but to all who have loved his appearing. That's Jesus coming to this earth and everything he's done. Folks, I just got to say, you got to love Jesus more than anything else. And if he's not the biggest love in your life, more than your children, more than your wife, more than anything else, more than yourself, we're not going to be able to keep the faith. We're going to compromise somewhere. You got to love Jesus. That's what it's all about. All right. The next statement. Verse 9, 10, 11, and 12, and through 15. There's a section here where Paul's going to outline all these trials that he's facing at the end of his life. And so let's read through them quickly, but I just want you to know that there's trials right up to the end. So verse 9, make every effort to come to me. For Demas, and we can read about him in Philemon, verse 24, having loved this present world, he said, deserted Paul. That means left him behind, abandoned him, even in Paul's time of darkest need. He's deserted me and gone to Thessalonica. He mentions Crescens. He's gone to Galatia, Titus to Dalmatia. Now, we don't know, why they're there. He just tells Timothy where they've gone. He said, only Luke is with me. Who's that? Who is Luke there? That's the Dr. Luke, isn't it? Who wrote the Gospel of Luke and wrote the book of Acts. He's traveled with Paul, and he's with Paul, probably tending to him in this prison before he's about to be executed. So he says, pick up Mark and bring him with you. Now, best understanding, this is Mark, that we found in Acts 13 that came on the first missionary journey and abandoned Paul and went back. And so on the second journey, Paul refused to take him on the second journey because he said, I need someone dependable. But now Mark has matured. He's kept the faith and fought the fight. He's lived life well. And he said, bring him with him. Why? He's useful. Isn't that beautiful? He's useful to me for service. See, spiritual life, it's not a sprint. We don't come out of the gate, super Christian. It's a process. We mature and grow, and Mark has grown into a useful person. Tychicus, he's sent to Ephesus. Where is Timothy right now? He's at Ephesus. So if Timothy's going to go to Rome, Paul's sending Tychicus to Ephesus. No doubt he's carrying this letter. All right. And the word sent means apostle. It's the same word we get apostle from. Paul said one sent forth. He's an apostle of Tychicus, not apostle of Jesus Christ, but he's a messenger or a servant. All right. When you come, Timothy, bring the cloak. That's Paul's outer garment. He's in a cold, damp cell, which I left at Troas. Don't know why. And with Carpus, this other Christian individual. And he said, bring the books, especially the parchments. One is written in vellum. The book would be papyrus. And so we don't know what these are. Are there actually books of the Old Testament or Paul's own writings or something else? But he needs them and he wants them. Then he turns to another trial. Alexander, the coppersmith, did me much harm. See, Paul had trials right to the end. He said, the Lord will repay him according to his deeds. That's how bad it was. He says, you, Timothy, be on guard against him yourself, for he vigorously opposed our teaching. He was against Christ. He was had the spirit of the Antichrist. Now we look at the last section, and then we'll hear the last words of Paul, and they're the most encouraging. We're in verse 16. At my first offense, no one supported me, but all deserted me. May it not be counted against them. But here's the contrast. I want you to see it. But the language is so beautiful. He said, the Lord stood with me, stood alongside him. The word strengthened me means he empowered him. And that's what Jesus said. Even though he felt forsaken on the cross, he's made this promise. I'll never forsake you. I'll never abandon you. I'll always stand with you. And how did that happen? Well, his first trial, he was delivered from prison and he went out on another preaching trip. Now he's in prison again. And this is before the destruction of Jerusalem. So we're somewhere in the late 60s. AD 65, 66, and he's about ready to die again. But he said, the first time the Lord delivered me, he stood with me. And that's why I want you to see the day of death is your final deliverance. It's where you get your rest. You can get out of this world of nonsense. Yes, it has its days of sunshine. Yes, it has its days of wonderful pleasure that give us a picture of what paradise might be like, but it's just a shadow. But it's full of misery and hardship in many ways. And the more you get more like Christ, the more you feel disdain for this world because it's so evil and corrupt. And here he says, your day of death is going to be a day of deliverance. Now, how do you get that, Jack? Notice what he says in verse 17b. All right. The Lord stood with me and strengthened me, or that through the proclamation might be fully accomplished, and all the Gentiles might hear. And I was delivered out of the lion's mouth, and the Lord will rescue me, verse 18, from every evil deed, and will bring me safely to his heavenly kingdom. To him be the glory forever and ever. Amen. The word rescue literally means to gather to yourself, to pull in. Now I get the picture of, we have an hope is an anchor for the soul, and it's anchored in heaven. God's at the other end, and he's pulling us in as fast as he can. That's the idea of rescue, deliver. Well, when is Paul going to be brought safely to his heavenly kingdom? It's the day he dies. The world, and Satan is doing it, is going to execute Paul. Satan thinks he's won. But Paul says, no, that's the very moment I'm being rescued from every evil deed. That's when I really finally get to be brought safely to his heavenly kingdom. Now, I don't know how to get there. I don't even know where it is, but I don't have to worry about it. The Lord's going to take me there. He's going to bring me home. And that's why Paul says, to him be the glory forever and ever. Amen. So I don't know, as Christians, we look for the day of our death, because it's the day of our deliverance. It's the day of glory. It's a day of getting finally our crown, our reward. And we live each day now in the present with that in mind. So we don't compromise. We don't go back into the world. We're always looking forward to our departure. All right. We'll just finish a couple words and we'll be done. We're right on time. These are some personal remarks that Paul says to Timothy. He says, greet Priscilla and Aquila. We know them. They're the tent makers that worked with Paul. They were in Corinth. Now they're at Ephesus, obviously. They're the one that took Apollos aside and taught him more accurately the way of truth. He said also the household of Onesiphorus. Remember, he's the one that had the slave owner, that Paul sent his Philemon back to. Then Erastus, who remained in Corinth, he said, Trophimus, I left sick in Miletus. See trials. Just, everyone has problems on this earth. He says, make every effort to come to me before winter. That's why, remember, bring the coat. It's going to be cold. He says, Eubulus greets you, also Pudens and Linus and Claudia and all the brethren. See, people are aware their brotherhood is just a big family. And notice the last words he ends with, like, Paul, these are your last words that you've recorded for us before you died. That's all that we have. It's the most profound words. That's all we really need to hear. It's a prayer of blessing. It's a prayer. Well, let's read it. He said, may the Lord be with your spirit. Not with your body, not with your bank account. May the Lord be with your spirit. Then he says, grace be with you. That's all we need is grace. We don't deserve it. We can't do it on our own. And it's only with the Lord's help that we'll be strengthened and get home. Thank you, Paul. We don't know if Timothy ever made it to Rome. We don't know what happened. We don't know for sure how Paul died. But we can have all the confidence in the world that Paul's in heaven with his Lord. He's wearing his victor's crown. And we also have confidence that Timothy's united with him. And Paul gets to see his son in the faith, and they're together once again. And these words he leaves for us that remain on this earth. We all have an expiration date. We know what we mean by that. It's just the Lord knows when that day is. It's not that he takes us on that day. He already knows just because he has foreknowledge. We don't know when it is, but we got to live every day as though it could be today. And that's why this section is so aptly titled, live well by finishing strong. All right, there's our message for us. Thank you, Paul, for those words. And thank you for our Father for speaking to us through him. All right, 2 Timothy, we're done. You all want to unmute yourself and I sure missed Sam. I had to do all the talking. That's why I had Steve do an excellent job at reading for me. Thank you. We have 16 wonderful people online or Zoom. Appreciate it. And we have 17 on YouTube. All right. Any thoughts or comments?
Well, I think, Paul was concerned about the welfare of the churches during this time, the persecution that was taking place under Nero.
Yeah.
And he's admonishing Timothy to safeguard the gospel and guard it. And that's a good lesson for us today.
Yeah.
We have to do that.
Yeah, there's so many words. He says, keep the pattern of sound words, preach the word, pay attention to yourself and to your doctrine. Yes, constantly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought
Oh.
chapter 4, verse 18, especially applicable to today and this things that are all happening in society. The Lord will rescue me from every evil deed.
Yeah.
That one really strikes a chord with me.
Yeah. Yeah. And as Jack pointed out, the king they're supposed to honor in their day is Nero. He was one of the wickedest kings or emperors that ever lived. And Paul's not concerned. He said, the Lord will deliver us. And so it doesn't matter what happens politically here. I know it matters in the short term. I get all that. But in the big picture, does it really matter? No. He'll deliver us, won't he?
Right.
Is it morbid for anyone to pray, Lord, come take me?
I don't think so.
Didn't they say, isn't it said, Lord, come quickly? Isn't that
Yeah.
there throughout?
That's Maranatha. It's the idea.
Yeah, right.
Lord, come
Maranatha,
quickly.
that's it.
Take all of us. Yeah.
But yeah, I think you have to go back and look at Paul's attitude, whether he was to stay or leave. He said it was more beneficial that he stay because it would be beneficial to them in the gospel's sake.
Yes.
So we should never treat it that way, I think, in regards to just wanting to be taken out of here. When the Lord's ready, your time will
Yeah.
come. But at
Yeah.
the meantime, you need to do all you can for the cause of Christ.
Because we're pouring our life out as a drink offering, a sacrifice to him.
Right.
Right. But even there, Paul said, I desire that the word lust. He lusted to go to heaven. And so that's what I'm
Well-
trying to get us to see, that becomes our desire. It's stronger than anything else. And so that's going to help us prevail.
Well, he said it a couple of times that he didn't count his life as anything to himself.
Yeah.
It didn't mean anything to himself. It
Right.
was all about serving Christ. He was totally focused. His whole life was about serving Jesus, and whatever that brought, he didn't care about his own physical life. He had to tell the brethren, I'm ready to die in Jerusalem for the name of Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. And so he had the right attitude.
Right. What do y'all think about him having trials up to the end? Do you think how does that sit with you?
Same with us.
Yeah. So there's no retirement, huh?
No, not really.
I mean, we retire from our jobs, but spiritually, it's a fight to the very end, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I want everyone to see that. That's what Paul suffered or dealt with. And so we shouldn't think it abnormal. It's supposed to be that way. Yeah. All right, Ann Hoover, you knew I was calling on you.
I kept thinking back to Sunday morning's lesson, and the whole the very graphic description of Jesus facing death and everything that he went through for the days up before his death. He never said anything. Beaten, spit on. He didn't say a word. But the one thing he could not take was to be separated from God.
Yeah.
And this is reinforced for us that we don't ever have to worry about that separation. At the point of our death, somehow we don't have to do anything more. We'll just be taken home. It's just, and we won't be alone.
Yeah.
We will not be alone. We will never have to go through what Jesus went through.
Right. That's a beautiful thought. Yeah. Yeah, just thinking about the trip there, it's exciting. Like I've thought about how's that going to happen, but we won't know till we get there.
Paul Hawthorne used to say he hoped it was like a big fancy roller coaster, this wee.
And again, the only picture we see is, you know, who was the guy in the Old Testament that was just taken?
Elijah?
Enoch.
Enoch.
And Elijah.
He wasn't. Elijah, we have a picture of him taken up
In a whirlwind.
right. And then the only other thing would be the rich man and Lazarus. He was escorted by angels. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. Where did they
Wasn't
go?
Daniel too?
I don't know. Huh?
Wasn't Daniel was too, wasn't he? Oh my goodness, time to look it up.
I'm pulling a blank on that one. If he is, I just can't.
Maybe that was just being the answer, his prayers being answered.
Yeah. He has a vision of the Son of Man appearing in heaven, but that's exciting. Angels will get you there, so you don't even have to worry about it. Another thing, when you're in the womb, I'm talking about physically, to be born into the real world, you have to leave the safety of your mother's womb, right? The same thing with death. If you want to get to heaven, you got to leave this world. Now, a baby, what does it do to get born or birthed?
It doesn't do anything.
Nothing. Now, what are we going to do to get birthed into heaven? How are we going to get it? Absolutely nothing. That's God's job. He'll take care of it. But all of a sudden you'll be, and if there are any tears, the first thing he's doing is wiping away the tears out of our eyes. So it's the parallels are amazing. Just like you're birthed into this world, we're going to be birthed into heaven. And it's the most exciting thing because that's the real life. Yeah.
Well, it's the same way with salvation.
Yes.
It's nothing we can do.
Yes.
It's all about Jesus working his grace through the water.
Exactly. Good point.
How does it happen? Who knows? We don't know. We just know that it does.
Yeah.
As long as we keep two fundamental principles before us the rest of our days, that's reading God's word and devoted in prayer, then that all comes about.
Yeah, it'll help us keep the faith, those spiritual disciplines. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, Brian.
Sir.
Go ahead.
I'm impressed with verses 17 and 18, where he uses the word rescue twice there.
Yes.
He says, I was rescued, past tense, and the Lord will rescue me, future tense, from every evil deed. So that's encouraging to know that in our life, there's probably in the times in our past where the Lord has rescued us from things.
Yeah.
And he will rescue us from other things in the future. And that's encouraging. That's encouraging.
Now that evil deed, I think, is what Paul's calling his execution. It wasn't just. It wasn't fair. If you want justice, it's Jesus going to rescue from it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, how is he going to rescue him? By allowing him to die? It's just uncanny. We don't think that is a rescue. We think that is a defeat. No, it's a rescue. Getting you out of here.
Yep.
Good. I like that too. Fireman Mark.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Oh, you know, with our day-to-day lives, you know, we just, like I said, you know, we get caught up in so many different things, you know, in our day-to-day thing. And I tend to be a little more probably outspoken about some of my opinions than I probably should be, but, you know, we definitely have to focus on the bigger picture, you know, the you know, what really, you know, is important in the long run. And like you said, I mean, what we have going on now, it makes a difference in our temporal lives, you know, what's going on now, like I said, in the short term, but we still have to remember God's in control and he has the ultimate, you know, he's got the plan. We don't know what it is. we have to be prepared on a daily basis to, to finish our race
Yeah.
and do try to bring as many people along with us as we
Yeah.
can.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nothing else matters, does it?
Not in the long run.
Yeah. Jeff, Marissa, Patty, we're waiting for your comments.
Good class. Verses 6 and 7, some of my favorite. You'll hear those a lot at funerals,
Yeah.
as we all know, and every Christian strives, Lord willing, to be able to say those on someone's behalf, right?
Yeah.
And they've really been a special spot in my heart for a long time, and so I really appreciate you bringing them to light tonight. And kind of echoing what everyone is already saying, Jackie and I really tried to spend a lot of time the last probably 30 days working through things for everything that's just going on, and just a lot of prayer, I guess, is just the request for that. A lot of just a lot of extra turbulence that we know for everybody in life, and leaning on God's word is just that much more important. Heard it again this morning from someone I was with, and before work, and just a lot of prayer, a lot of stuff going on in perspective, like Mark was just saying, about what's going on right now. It's hard on everybody, and it's hard on the church right now abroad, and it's more specifically locally. And so a lot of patience and a lot of prayer. I appreciate.
I like what you said about, you hear that at funerals, and Paul's writing his own obituary here.
Yeah.
What's going to be said about you at your funeral? And Paul said, well, I'll say it right now. I fought the good fight. I've finished the course. I've kept the faith. Some people suggest write this down as your own obituary and then try to live it. Make it your goal, because it is our goal. Yeah. There's nothing better to have that said about us. Yeah. Nice.
I'm still amazed, Jack, when I think of all the grief and sorrow that happened at the cross when Jesus died upon that cross, and how the disciples felt and what they went through. But then when Jesus appeared to them, he proved that the resurrection is so real, and that you're all going to experience that. And what confidence did they have after that took place?
Right.
What kind of confidence did they have? Jesus proved it all, everything he said.
Yeah.
And we're going to live again, and we're going to die. We're all going to go the way of the earth. But at the same time, we're going to rise again, and we're going to be with him again.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful.
It's exciting. Yeah. All right. Well, Lord willing, next week we're going to do Titus. It's the last of the pastoral epistles. It's a lot of material similar, some of it's different. So, and hopefully Sam will be back. And I don't know what else to say.
Jack, can I pass something along?
Please.
The Church of Christ Disaster Relief Fund has set up a distribution site at the Kaiser Church. And that's for anyone that lost a home or was affected by the fire. It's priorities given to Church of Christ members, but anyone can apply. You just have to go there. I think they're open 10 to 12 and 1 to 3 or something like that. And we did, Artie and I did go out there. We picked up supplies for Robert.
Nice.
It's amazing what they've got out there to help people out.
Yeah, they've helped in hurricanes and other things. It's wonderful. Yeah. Nice.
Right.
Good.
Are they accepting donations?
You can send the donations to the relief fund, but not there.
Material things?
Oh, no, they take money donations, and then they purchase all this, and then they have a fleet of semi trucks that they deliver this material out as disasters happen.
Okay.
Nice. Patty got transformed into a cat. All right. Do I get an award?
You do.
You
All
did.
right.
Yes.
Hey, Jack, plug the class Sunday morning.
I'm sorry.
Plug your class Sunday morning.
Oh yeah, and I'll send out an announcement again. But Sunday morning, 9:00, we're in the Parables of the Kingdom. So we'll put it on Facebook Sunday morning, remind you, and we'll send you an email too. So 9:00, Zoom only.
You're
Zoom
running,
only.
remember you're running solo, so
Yeah.
all the little things.
Good. And then Mariano's preaching Sunday night in place of Sam. So make sure you guys all tune in for that if you're not there in person. So good.
Jack,
Yeah.
Jack,
Yeah.
I got an email from you about a newcomers class.
Yes. I'll follow up with you on that. Okay.
Okay.
And when that'll happen.
All right.
I'll call you. Okay.
Jack, this is Brian.
Brian.
Would you mention to Mariano if he wants me to pick out some songs, or if he want to send me some songs for Sunday night?
Yeah. I'll get him. Yeah. I'll get him a form and he'll send. Yeah. Okay. Well,
I don't know if he's, because usually I just lead whatever you and Sam want. So
yeah. All right. I'm glad you mentioned it because I didn't know who the song leader was. Now I do.
yeah, that's me.
So good. Brian, I know you're not living in the dark, but it looks like you're in the dark.
Oh, I just have the lights turned out.
All right. That's cool.
Kelly's laptop is not real new, and we can see it better if the lights are out. So
Gotcha. And then Jack's mic sounds really good today. He must be on his PC.
I am. I'm on the Ethernet too, so things are working well.
All right.
yeah, there's a
there's
little better.
Steve. Hi, Steve. I can see half your face. All right. All right. I'm going to sign off. It's been great. Love Paul's letters, and I hope you appreciate it as much as I do.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you later then. Okay.
Thank you,
bye-bye.
Jack. Great class.
Good night.